Today, my wife and I are visiting Colonial Williamsburg, an amazing living history museum in Virginia that tells the early part of America's enduring story. Come along with me and my wife as we explore a history buff's paradise. That's coming up next.
What a tidy little grouping we have today. As Mrs. Smith mentioned, of course, Mrs. Washington as her service, and it is in the year of our Lord of 1769 that I join you this day. And it is a joy, my friends, that you might take a moment this morning to come on a bit of a stroll about the city with me. Admittedly, my husband and I, when we're in the city, we typically stay on the other end of town. But as he is occupied at the Capitol this morning, as he is a member of the House of Burgesses, representing Fairfax County, I have been at my leisure, well, leisure is a relative term, of course, but my duties have taken me to this end of the city to check upon some of my properties. Anything with Custis on the name, as that building is just behind you, is mine just now, including the very lovely Custis Square. Oh, even if you turn around, you cannot see it, unfortunately. But Custis Square there on the back street, which is mine just now, and one day will be my son's, but it is, friends, should you be interested at all, very soon to come up for rent. And if you have £45 a year, I'm sure that you are more than happy to rent it from us. And we should be more than happy to be your landlords of the subject, but we can discuss business later on. If you do not mind, I should be more than happy to take you for a bit about the city, if you have the time. Please feel free, friends. I do not wish to bombard you with my own tales the entirety of the time. So should you have any questions, should you have any comments or stories of your own, please feel free to engage in apt conversation, not only with me, but with each other. And of course, as Mrs. Smith said, owing to the effluvia of the season, we are all keeping our distance from one another just now. And these catalpa trees, blessedly, have not bloomed as of yet, but as soon as they do, you will be given a new type of hell within this city, for they will make your eyes water and your throat close with great speed. So, we are thankful for the small miracles of today, are we not? Well, with that, friends, if there are no more questions, why don't we walk a bit down Palace Green where we can continue our conversation, yes? Wonderful. Come with me.
How often does your House of Burgesses meet?
Typically twice, in the spring and in the fall. But of course they come into the city whenever they are needed. My husband's on several different committees that meet at various times. Some he likes better than others, but that is his business, not mine.
How did you meet George?
Oh, you mean Colonel Washington?
Colonel Washington.
Good gracious, we're not so informal on the high street, are we? We'll get to that, sir. All in good time today, I think. I don't even call him George. So. I'm sure the only person under God's earth that is allowed to do that is his mother, and usually when she's crossed with him.
So do you call him Colonel Washington?
In public, yes. But of course we all have pet names for one another, don't we? He is the colonel no longer, madam, but he retains the honorary title. Yes, sir, in the late war. Here, we shall stop just about here. Now, I have made a vast error already in our time this morning, my friends. I apologize. I've made the assumption that you are already quite familiar with myself, which seemingly you already know my husband and are very close with him, calling him by his first name. But I will be perfectly frank with you. I am not from Williamsburg. I was born some 25 miles west of here, out in New Kent County. If you're familiar with Virginia at all? Yes, you know New Kent? I was born along the Pamunkey River there, in Chestnut Grove, which is my parents' estate. And it was quite an idyllic childhood. I am the eldest of 8 of my parents' children, all 8 of us surviving infancy. My mother is blessed with good genes. And we were sent out to play quite frequently, for as a mother myself now, I understand that the house is much more quiet and clean if you send them outside rather than keeping them in. And as I said, it was quite idyllic, for the closest neighbor to us was 4 miles away. And the easiest way of telling if he were home is if we could see the smoke coming from the chimneys over the tops of the trees. And my father, being the clerk of New Kent County, almost from the moment that he arrived on these shores to his dying day, well, he had business that brought him to the capital city with great frequency. And myself, being the eldest, and of course being the most spry of all of my siblings, it was my duty, it was my honor, my responsibility to escort my father into the city with great frequency as a child. Also, as the eldest, I could run faster than my siblings and get into the carriage with them before they could as well. So I have been coming to Williamsburg since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, as my mother has always said. And it is, in essence, like a second home to myself. But whenever I think of Williamsburg, there is, of course, a specific building that is quite iconic to it. And, well, I will ask you all. None of you live in Williamsburg, do you? Do any of you own property here in the city? Not yet. Remember, Custis Square is available for rent, should you wish to. So when you think of the capital city, what building is the most iconic to you? What do you think of when you think of Williamsburg? Well, sir, it's almost as though I put you within the eye view of it, is it not? The Governor's Palace, is it not? And that is my building as well, but probably not for the same reasons. When you think of the palace, what do you think of, sir? The king. God save him, indeed. Of course, the grandeur of this place. It is representative of the monarchy just here in Virginia. And of course, I think of it for a different reason, sir. Probably one that you, as adept as you are at dancing, I'm sure you would never experience. But it was in that building just there that I had one of the most terrifying moments of my entire life, my young life, I should say. When I was very young, of course, I had no intentions of learning how to dance. No young child truly wishes to. Well, I shouldn't say that. My husband paid for his own dancing lessons, but that was when he was a little bit older. But my mother, being a Jones of Williamsburg, she expected all of the Dandridge children to aspire to be of the same social level that she was, and that she enjoyed when she grew up. And thus, my mother and father procured the services of a dancing master. He was an itinerant man, meaning he would come through for 1 free-day out of every month. All of the children in the area would gather around and we would attend to our dancing lessons, which meant that all other lessons ceased, and for that small amount of time, all we would do was dance. We would wake up, we would dance. We would break our fast, we would dance. We would have our midday meal, we would dance. And then, of course, in the evening, what do you think we did? We danced, sir. Well done, you're listening. And of course, it was during that time that we would show off to our parents what their money had just bought them by dancing for them. Now, I truly never had the time to. There were entirely too many other things, too many other trees that I wished to climb out of doors, until I was about 15 years old, when an invitation arrived to our estate inviting not my parents, but myself and my younger brother John to a ball in the Governor's Palace. Now, being a Dandridge, of course, we expected to entertain in the capital city. We expected perhaps in a private home like Mr. Witt's, perhaps a tavern at a subscription ball. But to be invited without your parents to represent the entire family at the Governor's Palace, well, that put my dancing lessons into a new perspective, and one that I felt that I needed to take a bit more seriously. And so, my brother John and I, who is next in line to me, we practiced a 68-bar minuet time after time after time after time. Because, of course, as you all know, in Williamsburg, and indeed in Virginia and most other genteel places, how are each and every ball begun?
With a minuet.
With a minuet! Exactly, madam. The minuet is a very courtly dance coming from the French court, from Louis XIV. It is designed to show off your skill and ease, not only with your own body, but with your dancing ability. And it is stepped one couple at a time, from the highest ranking couple in the room down to the lowest. in complete silence, save for the musicians, of course. So when you go to a ball at the governor's palace, who do you think steps the first minuet? The governor, exactly, sir. And who do you think he steps it with?
His wife.
His wife, exactly, madam. These are not hard questions, my friends. But what happens if his wife is not there? Who does he step it with then? The next highest ranking lady, exactly, madam. You have been to several balls, I can already tell. Which means that His Excellency would step with the President of the Council's wife. Which means that Mr. President steps with Mrs. Speaker, which means that Mr. Speaker steps with Mrs. Attorney General, which means that Mr. Attorney General steps with Mrs. Treasurer, and so on and so on and so on. And thus, my very first ball in the capital city at the Governor's Palace, representing my family with my younger brother, my hopes of dancing the minuet with him were dashed within the first minuet stepped. Being a Dandridge, of course, I'd say that we were smack in the middle of society. And thus, that is where our minuet lay. And my brother stepped his a full half an hour after mine. And when I were called to the floor, I were called to step with a gentleman whom I'm sure is very lovely. I do not recall his name. I think he was a member of the House of Burgesses at the time, son. But the most glaring thing that I remember about this young man was that we clearly had had different dancing masters. Because, gentlemen, it is up to you to tell us what to do during this dance. It is not choreographed, which means that every turn of the hand, every point of the foot, every doffing of the cap means something specific to us, for as I said, it was danced in complete silence. And thus, I entered into 68 bars of sheer terror in that building down there. And of course, this were before that beautiful ballroom were added to it, where you could have some distance between you and your family and friends gathered around to watch. This minuet was stepped in that front hallway. Have you been to the front hallway? Imposing, is it not? Even more imposing when you are being watched by 80 pairs of eyes, stepping a minuet with a complete stranger. Now, my brother told me that I did not embarrass the family, nor did I fall down, but that is the one thing that has a tendency to flash in my mind every time I have to come to the capital city. But I will say, my friends, that for all of the terror that that evening ensued, it did allow for one thing. I was 15, represented my family by myself, which meant that I began to have the ability to come into the capital city by myself to engage in social visits. And of course, when you are 15, that begins the time where you ought to be thinking about that next great passage in your life, that being marriage. But my mother thought that this would open the doors, if it were, to myself and my younger brother to begin to engage in the society of the capital city, so that we perhaps might find our true match within the capital city. And indeed, there were plenty of eligible gentlemen and ladies for my brother at the time. However, my mother was not entirely displeased when, at the age of 17, it turned out that the gentleman who truly captured my eye was a man of New Kent, in fact. A gentleman whom I had grown up next to, in fact. But as it seems as though we are drawing a bit of a crowd, my dear friends, why do we not take our small grouping? Why don't we just go under that large tree over there? And it will also afford you an opportunity to take your ease for a time, yes? Oh, very fine. Follow me, friends.
Well, that's a wrap for this Colonial Williamsburg video. I hope you really enjoyed it, getting to see another part of this amazing living history museum. If you like this sort of stuff, check out my other videos. Check out colonialwilliamsburg.org to plan your own visit here, because it's so much cooler in real life than it is on film. Till next time, this is History Buff, TN Photobug signing out, and I'm having a blast with the past.